Some guy at work was caught red-handed stealing AirPods from the locker room. When he was sent to pick up his own kit before being sent home, he excused himself to go to the toilet, and took a shit on the floor. The kicker is that we work on an oil rig. It's impossible to get away with theft, and he was a senior technician making really good money. He didn't need the AirPods, he was just stealing for the fun of it. He's now not required back, and all the companies talk to each other. He shat away his career over a pair of AirPods. Friend of a friend got caught in one of those to catch a predator-style stings. Was messaging with what he thought was a 14-year-old and tried to meet up to have sex. Lost his wife, all his friends, his apprenticeship, and spent the next several years in prison. Watched the same thing happen. Had a wife, a kid on the way, a good job. I was in the same grade as his little sister, he was 2 years older, and we went to the same school from kindergarten through high school. Last year he was sentenced to almost 40 years in a federal prison for conspiracy to solicit a 14-year-old, who was actually an undercover agent, and a slew of CP charges. Now the wife has divorced him, he will never see his kid, and will be an old man when or if he gets out. There were a lot of things he did/said in online chat forums that are so horrible I couldn't even putting that shit out there. I used to work at a wedding reception place. One wedding, the groom and a bridesmaid, I think it was the bride's cousin, got drunk and snuck out the back for a quickie. I didn't realize they'd done this and, as I did, threw a bag of rubbish off the upstairs kitchen balcony into the bin, which scared the shit out of them enough that the bridesmaid has bitten down on the groom's dick mid-blowjob. Lots of blood. Then when the ambulance has shown up, the guys tried to start a fight with one of the ambulance drivers for some reason, and we ended up having to call the cops as well, and the guys gotten arrested. Guy's boss, fairly high-paying lawyer job by the sounds of it, was at the wedding and was definitely planning on sacking the guy after what happened. So the dickhead lost both his fiancée/wife and job on his wedding day. And I never found out just how bad the injury to his dick was, but it didn't look good. Note well, I put drunk in scare quotes because the other thing that had happened that night is that I'd fucked up with the beer kegs and we'd been serving light, low alcohol, beer as full strength that night. So this guy had been acting drunk but hadn't actually had very much to drink at all. My uncle was an ambidextrous baseball pitcher in high school. Absurdly good at it. He could have gotten an athletic scholarship, gone to college, maybe gone pro. His dad died, he got into drugs, and now he's a heroin addict in and out of prison. Do you still have contact with him? My uncle was a crazy talented musician. He's about 20 years older than me, so by the time I have some solid childhood memories, I remember going to concerts and things backstage, meeting other famous musicians, etc. He was just so close to it himself, it was amazing to watch, and he was very loving toward my brother, his daughter, and me. Then the drug habit got out of control and he slowly lost everything, conned my grandparents out of their savings and almost their home, and went to prison several times. His daughter hasn't seen him except once at my grandpa's funeral in the last 15 years, I haven't spoken to him for 10. He writes my mom lengthy, nonsensical emails blaming her for his failures and recites wild conspiracy theories. I'll always care about him, but there's nothing any of us can safely do to help until he decides he needs to help himself. I was a child protection specialist for years. I was assigned to work with a certain mom. It was the third time the courts had been involved with her due to drug abuse. But her drug of choice was huffing, the only huffing case I ever had. She was absolutely a lovely person. She had worked hard to earn a degree and enter into a career field. She was kind and beautiful, she was cooperative and she was determined, but despite how hard she was trying, she would relapse, and this was to be the last chance she got with the courts, so the stakes were high. We worked so well together. She spent 18 months going to treatment, getting re-employed, getting her own place and having increased visits with her kids, who were also wonderful. The kids had been staying at her parents' place while we were working towards progress. We went to court and requested reunification and the judge granted it. We were all so proud of her, and happy for them as a family. We planned to fully move her kids home with her a week from that very court date. 2 days before we planned to return her kids to her, she drove her car through the front of a Walmart because she had been huffing and was high. She killed a Walmart employee and proceeded to huff herself to death in the electronics aisle, where there was keyboard duster spray, while law enforcement was on its way. I got the news at 5 a.m. that she was dead and had to go tell her children they wouldn't be going back to their mother. Ever. Recent example, guy was a doctor and now cannot work because he hit his wife while they were getting divorced. I don't know the specifics of it, but the domestic violence offense on his record is prohibiting him from working in medicine. I had an acquaintance who was a doctor. His ex-wife was a piece of work. When they were married, she said that he would say he hit her if he didn't agree to one of her demands. It was a minor thing, so he relented and agreed to one of her demands. He told his boss at work that argument, and his boss just basically said, "You can never be alone with this woman again, you will lose your career." He was looking into divorce anyway and knew that she wasn't above ruining his life, so he filed for divorce and made sure to never be alone with her again. All interactions were in public or with witnesses. This kid I went to college with was in the Army Reserves making really good grades, and his parents were really well off. The kid's life was set. Got an allowance every month from his parents, had a nice brand new car for school, lived in a nice apartment right off campus, and he had so much going for him. He didn't even have to work, just do his monthly reserve days, which were like 3 days a month. So set for life. To shorten the story a bit, he pissed hot at a random UA drug test for fucking cocaine. He got lucky and the army gave him a second chance. Not even 5 months later he pissed hot again for cocaine and marijuana. He somehow got lucky, again, and they just kicked him out on an other than honorable discharge. Parents pulled his funding and he had to get a minimum wage job at a sandwich shop. Never saw him again until he randomly popped up on my Facebook about a year later. I hit him up to see how he was. Up and moved halfway across the US. With this girl he got pregnant, and they were both working at Walmart barely affording rent. He sold his BMW to pocket the move up there. He also looked rough, to say the least, in a lot of his pictures. My younger brother broke up with a girl he liked, because she farted in her sleep. He was telling my older brother and I that he was in the midst of a miserable dry spell. And how he'd been seeing a girl he liked, but then she farted in her sleep and he was so grossed out because there are some things you don't need to see your significant doing. It just felt like the mystery was gone. My older bro was like, "Yeah, cause that's what the mystery was about, farting." I called younger bro a fucking moron, and older bro was like, "You're half right." Edit, when he said "you're half right" he meant my younger brother may be a moron, but he ain't fucking. My ex-wife, we had sort of realized that things wasn't going to work out in the long run, but we wanted to solve things as amicably as possible and take the time. There was no real animosity other than things just not working, until of course I found out she had some boyfriend staying there when I wasn't home. If she told me beforehand, I probably wouldn't even be that pissed, but just expedited the breakup so she could do what she wanted. But of course when I come home and literally find him, I got pissed, and instead of being any sort of humble or try to talk, she just screams and shouts that I could just go, and she now had a new guy that would take care of her. I said, "Okay," grabbed my stuff, gave her the bill for the rent and said it due in 3 days, "But your fella will of course take care of that, goodbye." He was the one that got the problem, because then she kind of had to go all in, and he did for a few months, and then basically told her that it wasn't really in the deal or plan to literally take over a wife with 2 kids, not mine, on a random Tuesday. And then she had to spend the next 10 years working all kinds of things 15 hours a day to be able to keep an apartment, and so on. We are friends today, in that I don't hate her, so we talk once in a while, and she says that that was the dumbest day in her life. Not just sitting down and discuss for even 5 minutes. Yep, my ex-wife did the same thing. She made sure I never saw the guy because she thought I would kill him, when in fact, it wasn't his fault, it was completely her fault, and I made that opinion well known. She is now a single mother, to that guy's kid, and living in her mom's basement more than 10 years later still. I have zero sympathy at all, and my life actually improved so much a year after her and I split up. Good riddance. Our daughter is 25. Every few years she just randomly blows up her life. Tells us not to call or talk to her, cuts off her real friends and makes them hate her. Ends up calling us months later because she's out of options/friends. She's currently living with us, rent-free, no job, but has some plan on moving south with randos from the internet. Can't talk to her without her getting angry. We don't know what to do. It's so unsafe. She had a good job a year ago. Had a nice 2-bedroom apartment, a great friend who picked her up for work every day. My sister did this for many years since she turned 20. Periods of stability, then flying off the handle. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder a few years ago. It was really hard on our family, and we had no idea she was mentally ill. We thought she was just kind of a jerk. Mania can really make someone unrecognizable. I recommend getting your daughter help with a psychiatrist. My sister is now on meds and frequent therapy, with a consistent job and almost done with her degree. I worked on a school bus as a monitor/aide. There was one driver, we'll call him Ed. Ed was always complaining about something. Every single day there was some new issue, some problem. He was a bit of a pain. He got into an argument with one of our supervisors over the radio one day and earned himself a 3-day suspension. His first morning back from his suspension. First route of the day, he gets on the radio and starts back complaining. Dispatch asks him a few simple questions, he responds with hostility and some really unprofessional comments. The director of transportation, our big boss, gets on the radio and asks Ed to meet him in his office after morning routes. Ed responds, "I'll be there if I have time." Boss says, "I need you to understand, this is not optional." Ed comes back, "I need you to understand, I'll be there if I have time." Mind you, this is on the radio as we are picking up high school kids, everyone can hear what's happening this entire time. Another dispatcher calls in and tells Ed, "When you finish your high school route, park your bus there at the school. We are bringing someone to take your route over, and to bring you back to the lot." Ed did not like this and responded by saying, "Negative, I am finishing my route. Me. If you want someone to drive my route, you get our boss's boss, and have her come drive this route, otherwise, I am finishing my route." Dispatch asked for an ETA to the high school, he responded, "Whenever our boss's boss is gonna be there. Otherwise, I get there when I get there." Somewhere around this time he starts talking like they were targeting him and picking on him, and that it ends today. Again, at this point he has a bus full of high school kids. Now, I did not see what happened at the high school, but I heard from several other drivers. Apparently, the police were waiting for him once he got there and they removed him from his bus. To quote one driver, he acted a fool the entire time. I'm not sure exactly what he was charged with, maybe kidnapping since he acted like he wasn't gonna bring the kids to school unless he got what he wanted? Theft for not bringing the bus back? No clue, but I do know he was arrested and fired. A few days later we get the news that he had a heart attack and died, most likely from all the stress. It ends today is a terrifying statement to make when you're in charge of children. I'm not surprised the police were called. I'd be afraid he was planning to drive off a bridge or something. Yeah. I remember hearing him on the radio just saying, it ends today, and thinking pretty much the same thing. That he'd take the bus and go on some police chase or something like that. I remember just sitting and listening so closely to the radio, as well as for any sirens. Just anxious the whole time, worried he'd do something crazy. My buddy Steve was the poster child for has it all. Good career, amazing wife, cute house. Then, the model trains happened. Not little setups, his guy took over the whole basement, then the garage. His wife went from amused to livid. Arguments turned into screaming matches. She eventually left, and Steve, in his model train bliss, barely noticed. The twist? He inherited a ton of money, and spent it all on antique train sets. Eventually though, he noticed, and no model could cure the blues of losing his incredible wife. I have a friend, I'll call him Jay, smart as heck but maybe a little on the spectrum, so clueless as to social things. But he made great money in tech. One day he's at a friend's house and the friend said something to the effect of, "Nobody could bug my house without me knowing." So Jay thought it would be funny to put a spare webcam he happened to have in his backpack in his friend's entertainment center, plugged into his Xbox, just to see how long it took him to notice. Well, the friend didn't notice, but his friend's girlfriend did, and thought the friend had been recording them having sex, so she called the cops. The cops arrested the friend. Jay hears about it and goes in to explain. He didn't think he needed a lawyer, he figured the cops would be able to see it was just a dumb misunderstanding. Thing is, in my state, placing a recording device in someone's home without their consent is voyeurism, which is a sex crime. And Jay just admitted, to the cops, on the record, that he had done so. Also in my state, it's a law that all sex crimes must be prosecuted, so even though Jay's friend and his friend's girlfriend didn't want to press charges, Jay still got prosecuted. The prosecutor and judge were as gentle as they could be, but he was still convicted. Now as a registered sex offender, for life, he has trouble finding and keeping work, gets harassed by neighbors, can't go to most of his kids' sports events, etc. All over one seemingly harmless prank. Damn. That's a sad fuck up, especially since they didn't want to press charges on him. Probably me when I was younger, I spent my entire teenage years alone because I gave up easily. Because I was scared of everything, I didn't have friends, love, dances, etc. I seriously was absolutely lifeless inside. You were not the only one. My best friend and hetero life mate. Early 30s with wife, kids, great job, and lots of friends. He was always looking for inventive ways to party. He figured out that you could order dried poppy pods online, grind them up, and make poppy tea. This stuff is strong. 4 to 6 ounces will have you floating on a cloud for 24 hours. Dosages kept going up over the next 10 years, until he couldn't physically drink enough fluid to maintain his habit. Lost his wife, kids and then his third-generation family business job. Then he switched to heroin, living in a $500,000 home with no power or water. Junkies everywhere. When he overdosed, they stuffed his body in a closet for 3 days so they could burn through his credit and debit cards before reporting it to the police. Now his family is fighting squatters who have destroyed his home. I miss him every day. This is relatively mild, but it's still pretty sad. My mom is pretty isolated socially. She lives near me and for years her main source of interaction with other humans was me and my kids. She was emotionally abusive when I was a kid and was doing better for a few years, but then was ramping up the abuse again. I went no contact for several months, then had a sit down with her and discussed what abusive behaviors needed to stop for us to continue our relationship. She agreed. It lasted 2 years. She started ramping up the abuse again and then she put my kids and my immunocompromised niece at risk during the pandemic. My husband and I told her that she needed to adjust her behavior and acknowledge that her behavior wasn't okay. She used her usual manipulation tactics, a fake medical emergency that my husband took her to the hospital for, and when we didn't immediately forget everything that happened, she called the police for a welfare check on my kids. We haven't spoken to her in nearly 3 years and they have been the happiest years of my life. She now has no one locally. My brother had already distanced himself, he lives several hours away, and she's not even getting attention when she goes to the hospital, because my sister-in-law is now helping her manage everything and will only talk to the doctors about her health issues, not my mom. I hope being abusive and selfish was worth her loneliness now. They don't get better, they just get better at it. Part of the reason I stayed in contact with my mom for so long is that she didn't want to be the way that she is. She's a kind person, but incredibly damaged from an abusive childhood and has no ability to regulate her emotions, which is suspect is related to undiagnosed ADHD and some untreated mental illness. I could very easily be as abusive as she was, because I have the same problem with emotional regulation. I'm more self-aware than she is and I have better coping skills, so I'm breaking the generational cycle of abuse. She did actually try to be better, but unfortunately she spiraled into being awful again. My dad. He was a really talented mechanic and the shop foreman. Well liked, made great money, loved his job, owned a nice house in a beautiful neighborhood, in a port town we all loved. Married to a wonderful woman, my mom, had 2 kids. He just couldn't stop drinking. He became abusive and horrible. Lost everything. His house, his job, his family. He drank himself to death when I was 19, and my sister was 17. He died alone. To her enormous credit, after she left, my mom put herself through school and supported us all on her own. She got blacklisted by my dad's family and hers since the divorce was something they all looked down upon, and felt she shouldn't shame the family. They even threatened to gang up on her and lie in court saying she was on drugs. She was not. It was the bravest and best thing she ever could have done for us. At the funeral all these same people just kept telling her how brave she was, and we didn't know how bad he was till years later. My sister and I are both successful, thriving adults with great professions. We have our own families and children, we both own our houses and have a good income. We're well educated, our lives are filled with love, it's all thanks to my mom. Over the years I think about my dad from time to time. Having my own children now, a husband, all of whom I love dearly. I can't imagine any scenario I would ever put them through that. I don't feel sad about it anymore, but it's just such a waste. His whole life, and for what? Some liquid in a bottle. Addiction is a terrible thing. Edit to add, my mom is a rock star, nice to know the internet thinks so too. The 3 of us don't have contact with either side of the family anymore, and haven't for a long time. We love our little trio that has grown to include in-laws, grandchildren, and lots of friends. Your family is who you make it, don't waste time on people who don't love you.